Gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Connolly, for 3 minutes.
Gentleman's recognized.
I thank my friend. I thank the Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill. We often hear Republicans want to roll back the clock on abortion rights to 1973 before Roe v. Wade. Roll back the clock on teaching the history of American slavery. I don't know when, 1860, 1619? But this bill actually rolls back the clock. It's right there in the text. The bill mandates, quote, each agency shall reinstate and apply the telework policies, practices, and levels of the agency as in effect on December 31, 2019. Which begs the question, what was the state of federal telework in 2019? President Trump's administration had across-the-board limitations in telework then at major federal agencies that had made progress before, like the Department of Education and the Department of Agriculture. The overall telework participation rate had recorded its first drop since the enactment of the Telework Enhancement Act, authored by myself and Mr. Sarbanes of Maryland. And we had not yet experienced the onset of the global pandemic, which forced us overnight to move the federal government to a posture of substantially enhanced hybrid work. We deployed telework as the critical continuity of operations tool it should be. We procured IT and IT security we needed. Supervisors figured out how to manage hybrid work. And at the height of the pandemic, 75% of the federal workforce was, in fact, working remotely. But not everybody's going to continue to telework full-time, nor should they. Federal telework participation rates have already decreased substantially as more federal employees move back in person. The most recent telework survey showed that 47% of federal employees teleworked in the last fiscal year. But the fact remains that increased availability of telework is here to stay in the private as well as the public sectors. The Bureau of Labor Statistics found that 80% of U.S. businesses expect increased telework levels to continue after the pandemic. That's in the business community. That is the nature of the workforce of the future. We should be embracing the productivity and employee satisfaction gains realized through telework. I offered an amendment to this bill that would have done just that, but unfortunately, we're considering this bill under a closed rule. We should be using a measured approach to determine where hybrid or remote work might not be the best fit. I know I've done that in advocating for more in-person work at the IRS, processing paper tax returns, and at the State Department, responding to passport applications, and at the National Archives, fulfilling veterans' document requests, all of which require in-person functioning. And I've supported it, as have my colleagues. I've also offered a telework legislation bill, the Telework Metrics and Cost Savings Act. I asked for 30
Gentleman's time has expired.
I would grant him 30 seconds more.
Which would help agencies track telework goals, measure cost savings, and focus on using telework effectively. But this bill is sort of a one-size-fits-all, come back to work no matter what. And let me say to my friend from Wisconsin, I had a constituent die from COVID because there were no protocols in his federal workplace. There ought not to be any more casualties to COVID. We ought to have systematic protocols in place, and that's what I think has to precede this kind of legislation we're considering on the floor today. I thank my friend and thank my friend from Kentucky for introducing this bill.
Gentleman